afternoon. With all the sessions taking place today, thank you so much for investing your time with us, and thank you to Samba for sponsoring this session. I'm Danielle DeLauro, Executive Vice President of the VAB. So in this session today, you're going to hear from this wonderful panel that we have here who is driving the measurement conversation and also the innovation in their organization. And I think what's awesome about this panel is that we have a full representation of the ecosystem. And really what they are going to do today is give you some new strategies, some new ideas. They're going to give you real-world examples so that you feel inspired by the time that you leave here. So I hope that that's not too much of an ask for everyone here. I personally think of all the measurement conversations that are going on at Advertising Week, and there are a lot if you look through. I would dare to say that this is one of the most important because of the fact that it focuses on outcomes. If you think about advertising and media and what's happening with the shift from analog to addressable, there are more opportunities and a more desire by marketers to better understand how advertising is delivering their results, and really specifically how each media is contributing to those results. And that's really what we're going to talk about today. So in the next 29 minutes, we're going to take a few minutes for the panelists to introduce themselves, tell a bit about what they do, and then I'm going to kick off the conversation talking about just a little bit of high-level stuff. But really the meat of this is going to be real-world examples and spending some time talking about capabilities that all these partners have and how they work together. And we're going to have a little bit of an announcement, which is very exciting. I might ask for some audience participation, so make sure that you are listening and we don't catch you off guard. So let's get started with some panel introductions. Amy, you want to kick us off?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Pleasure to be here. I am a senior manager on the marketing growth measurement team at Spotify.
And hi, everyone. I'm Stephanie Gino. I'm the senior vice president of marketing and strategy at Affinity Solutions. Affinity Solutions, we are the outcomes company. So we focus on tapping into data from over 140 million debit and credit cards to connect the dots between advertising and outcomes.
Hey everybody, Chris Magel. I head up our agency and publisher solutions group, which means I work with our agency and publisher clients to help integrate Samba's data, audience, and measurement products into their own businesses so that they can offer better insights, better performance measurement to their advertising clients.
Hi everybody, George Ruiz, and I'm the Global Head of Marketing Science at TikTok. And with my team across the world, we look to answer two simple but difficult questions all of us in the room look to answer. Do the ads work, and how do they work?
And I think that's a great way to start and a great way to think about it, and really leads into the first question that I have. What should we be measuring, and how much should we be measuring? And before I ask here, I want to ask the audience. I told you guys you should listen. A show of hands, is there ever a conversation, or do you think it's possible to overmeasure? Do you think that it's possible to overmeasure? If you do think it's possible, can you raise your hand? Okay, it seems like for the people at home that most people think it's possible to overmeasure. So let's see what our panelists think. So this is one of the questions that's been asked down the line. So Amy, I'll start with you. So what should we be measuring? How much should we be measuring? And is it possible to overmeasure?
So I think it all depends on your discipline, right? Because we hear all the time at Spotify. I talk to advertisers in market all the time about the criticality of full funnel measurement. And that does have to be taken into consideration. We need to understand how we are taking our listeners and moving them from the awareness stage to the bottom of the funnel. I think where it can get tricky is when we're optimizing campaigns based on, let's say, a low funnel outcome, if that campaign really wasn't tailored to actually get us there. So I would say measure what your business needs to see the full picture, but be disciplined in where you're really making your media optimization decisions.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, to build on that, I think there's an adage, right? Just because you can measure it doesn't mean you should. And I think often, especially in this environment where there are so many tools and so many data sets being thrown at us on a daily basis, it can be really tempting to try to do everything. And I think we can all agree that every touch point supports a conversion, but that doesn't mean every touch point should be measured based on a conversion. And so it's really about how do we leverage this modern suite of metrics to work together and support that journey and support that path to purchase. And to Amy's point, really thinking about what is the objective of this initiative and how should I measure it in that moment in time.
Yeah, to add to that, I do think based on experience so far, you have to be singularly focused about what is the gauge of success for your campaign and how are you going to measure that success. If you attempt to have a campaign do more than one thing, especially things that require different tactics with the same campaign, then you're going to end up not doing well on either metric. So singular focus about what is the goal of this campaign. And I would say to add to this is when you're thinking about that process, you have to make sure all the stakeholders are on the same page. The marketer, the ultimate client, the agency, the publisher, and the measurement company that's doing the measurement. We all have to understand what is being measured, why it's being measured, and what are the tactics to support it. Now, on the question of can you measure a lot of things, yes, there's a lot more things that are measurable at a more granular level today than ever. And I'm a big fan of measuring secondary metrics, maybe if you're chasing a business outcome like advanced ticket sales, for example, for a theatrical release. It might be a good idea to be measuring media outcome metrics that go along with that campaign, whether it be reach thresholds or frequency thresholds or different audiences that you might be leveraging as tactics. Because if you can link those media outcomes to be able to, as drivers of the outcome, then those things are much more readily available and in campaign measurement, and you're able to use those as levers to ultimately optimize the campaign to the North Star outcome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think what I'll add on this is, what's important is, on top of this point, it's also about making sure that there is very clear link in terms of the decision you want to make from the measurement systems. Mm-hmm. And it's important in the context of that business decision with stakeholders outside of your immediate departments, whether that's finance or whatever different department, but that's why business outcomes become more important as a great way to equivalize the financial growth that you want marketing to drive. But what I also think is important is about to giving confidence for the teams on the ground to work into a measurement suite of features that can bring reproducibility. You bring reproducibility and actions that drive growth, it's a recipe for growth itself.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point. And I think when you think about when people in finance or what you're looking at as far as your measures of success, a lot of times what you're thinking about is how each platform is contributing to that success, right? It's not only about looking at attribution, but it's also looking about the contribution of each platform now that we're in this converged environment. So, Chris, I would ask you, when you look across this panel, Samba is actually a partner with every single company on this panel. Right, so yes, good for you. You know, you've made some really nice friends here, which I think is great. So my question to you is, what is Samba's approach as far as selecting partners? And can you give an example of how you select the partners, what you believe the path to success is as far as these partnerships, and ultimately how this helps advertisers?
Yeah, sure. So I'm going to start by just clarifying the kind of measurement that Samba puts into the market, right? So we are in the business of incrementality measurement, right? We are determining what is the incremental contribution, as you say, that the advertising is delivering to the ultimate KPI that is being measured, whether that's an action or a sale or a visit. And so we are creating, synthetic control groups that allow us to set a baseline of what would the normal customer be doing without having been exposed to the advertising. And then we're able to measure those exposed and calculate what the lift is that the advertising has generated. So incrementality measurement is the business we're in. In some of those cases, we're doing that with the data that we own ourselves, right? So we are a big player in tune-in measurement, which we're doing with some of the partners on the panel here. And we are not partnering with anybody for the data. We're bringing our own viewing data to the table to measure the contribution that the advertising campaign the programmer has put into market or have the effect it's having on tune-in. But we're also partnering with companies like Stephanie's company, Affinity, which I think is the announcement you were going to say before, so I didn't mean to blow it.
Spoiler alert.
Oh, Chris.
Sorry.
You know,
We have made the decision that in a world where there's a lot of first-party data available, there's a lot of third-party data available to do measurement, it makes a lot of sense to partner in both ways to be able to bring business outcomes into, like we've got TV data, we've got an identity graph. When we bring that together with purchase behavior data, we can create targeting solutions, we can create measurement solutions that are vertical and industry specific, and then we can deploy those products through partners like TikTok, like Spotify, that allow them to offer very specific measurement, performance measurement, and actually targeting solutions to their clients.
so George, why don't you start with talking about how you partnered with Samba? And I thought that the research that you did together, talking about tune-in specifically, and really the effectiveness of TikTok to drive tune-in for shows, live movies, live events and movies was very interesting. If you want to just dive a little bit into that and explain to the audience.
Absolutely. So here's one thing. I'm a researcher at heart, by the way. So I love the fact that the research that we've been doing together helps to paint a story of how to think about TikTok as part of the media mix, but also a complementary media mix. Where in the research that we did together think of like multiple studies on understanding how to drive tune-in. It is important to help clients whether in the media and entertainment sector, but we've been seeing that triple-digit lifts, about an average of 159% on average lift in tune-in, but 54% of those are incremental lifts in tune-in in the actual composition, but it's like 6 times more efficient in driving like viewers. So to me, it's less about the absolute number, but the fact that this thing I mentioned earlier, reproducibility, time and time again, like well over more than 90% of all these campaigns, they're showing statistical significant, very good, healthy numbers, but the reproducible story is that TikTok can be an effective and efficient driver of driving tune-ins for a media mix experience. How advertisers can build on that experience, that's the exciting part, because creative quality and bringing in authentic creative to the platform, it is critical. But it starts with having great insights, great planning, great measurement, and we know that it works, but it's going to have to be one client at a time, and that's the exciting aspect of it.
And so, Amy, let's shift to your partnership with Samba and talk the details about how you've been working together. And if you want to share your tune-in results, because you also did a tune-in partnership with them, and talk about how you combined audio and video and the Spotify Audience Network.
Yeah, I'd love to. So we do use Samba primarily for tune-in measurement, but what I love about our partnership is we're constantly thinking of ways to make measurement better, make it stronger, and show the breadth and depth of what we can do on Spotify's platform. So we're also experimenting with things like true reach and frequency, box office lift. Recently, and this is where it really goes to having a partner that can be a consultant to you, and that's certainly what we try to do with our advertisers is we want to consult with them on measurement. Samba's a great partner to offer that consultation. We had a gap in our podcast measurement, and we said, hey, what can we do to expand? So when advertisers are coming with these amazing plans across audio, video, display, we're also able to include pods. So we worked with the Samba team to expand that measurement capability to include pods. And what we saw is that because our podcast universe is such an incremental reach play, we were able to drive on our latest case study 53% tune-ins across just those podcast placements. So it's working together, sharing your problems, sharing your gaps, and that's what real partnership is them coming to the table with those solutions to help fill those gaps.
Yeah, just to add, one of my favorite things about being, I'm a former agency person. I've worked in agencies for almost 30 years. Being on this side and working on the publisher and platform side and finding the areas of the media marketplace that haven't been measured yet or haven't been measured effectively yet, and then working with our measurement science team and our data science teams, and quite frankly, making sure that everything is super privacy compliant, but solving those problems and helping publishers and platforms rationalize and quantify the contribution that they're making to a client's business outcome is an awesome, partnership to be involved with. It's a lot of fun helping people solve problems.
And I think that's a good point. I mean, without a marketer on stage, I think my question would be, though, what is the reaction of marketers? How has this, George, increased your demand or in business, or would have been the lift effects, business effects from this?
I think for me and my team last year was to prove that TikTok works. This year, the story is TikTok works better when, and I'll kind of back to some of the learnings we've had from some of the Samba tune-in studies. So now more and more the questions are, okay, great, we know that it works, but how can it work better for driving the, should we be doing targeting for those light users? That could be an audience question, or could it be different types of, it could be a media question, or increasingly, the more exciting part is it a creative question? So we know that if you use all the placements at TikTok, for example, like Pulse, it can work better when you use all these different things with the right kind of creative. And it may sound like a time-tested, very obvious strategy, but good ads work on TikTok. Great ads made for the platform work even better. And that's the effort that we're looking to do with the clients today.
One of the things that's great about working with companies like TikTok is it's addressable media. Addressable media means you can do all sorts of A/B testing. As many ways as you can cut it are as many different things you can learn about what's driving the outcome.
So Stephanie, you're sitting in the middle because honestly, you are the link of all of this together, right? Because you have all the consumer purchase data. So Chris ruined my announcement. So thank you, Chris, for doing that. I appreciate that. So we do have a big announcement, right? So we'll pretend like Chris didn't ruin it.
Yeah,
So
I'll build off of what Chris said earlier. Because you've heard the concept of outcomes come up a lot through the course of this conversation, and an outcome can be a tune-in, but at the end of the day, an outcome is also a purchase, right? And I think we can all agree that the ecosystem is talking about outcomes, and oftentimes that means e-commerce, oftentimes that means store traffic, but somebody going to your store is very different than somebody purchasing, and did they buy $500 worth of groceries or a $5 bag of cookies? Those are two very, very different things. And so when we think about the ability to apply data and transaction data within advertising these days, it's really about how do we take the value and the utility of understanding the context of what someone is buying, right? What people watch with what they buy, because we know that past purchases are the best indication of future shopping behavior, and really bring these two things together. So it's the marriage of what people watch, what people buy. We're applying that to targeting to be able to target with more precision. We're also applying it to measurement because, to Chris's point, it's not about just pure ROI, it's about incrementality, right? If I weren't to advertise at all, would I still have gotten that sale? And so we're really blending these data sets to deliver the best of both worlds to advertisers.
So Chris, do you think that this is the holy grail for Samba?
Yeah, I don't like to use the word holy grail for anything because measurement is really about learning and you're like on a journey forever. But it's really indicative of the direction we're going as a measurement company and as a data company. We are in the business of helping marketers understand what within their advertising mix is driving the most, what's working the hardest and driving the most business result for them. So an example of how we might be doing that with Affinity, and we just announced the partnership. This will be in market next year sometime. Let's say we'll use travel as an example. So Samba's in the business of creating TV behavioral targets. We often will use program viewership, or we use exposure to advertising, right? Or not exposure to advertising. So for a travel advertiser, we might actually create a target audience together that is comprised of in-market folks that are looking to plan travel in the near future or have clearly done so in the past. And we'd take that audience and identify what portion of them have actually not yet been exposed to that travel advertiser's linear TV campaign, which effectively is an incremental reach audience made up of very likely potential customers for that travel audience. So we're giving them an on-ramp to incrementality through targeting and optimization. And then when that travel advertiser runs their advertising campaign, if they run it with Spotify or TikTok or any of our other partners, we're able to quantify the contribution that partner made to that travel sales outcome, again, because we're using the affinity data that was as a result of those exposed to the campaign.
So it seems like, if there's one word I think we've talked a lot about, is partnership. So, and obviously you guys are all partners. I think my question is, in today's fragmented media landscape, right, do we think that partnerships like you have is the way forward? Is that the only way that advertisers can really be able to get a true capture of what their media advertising is delivering for them? And do we think that that really is the way forward? Do we think that the walled gardens are going to be able to give that, or do we think that one media company is going to do that, or do we think partnerships is the way of the future? Or is it something in between? So, Stephanie?
Yeah, I would say I don't think you can underestimate the importance of partnerships within this ecosystem. We're so fragmented, things are changing on a constant basis, and creating a marketplace where you have individual entities that have a depth of expertise and knowledge within their respective areas, but then the ability to come together and connect that, I think is really critical, because no single entity, no matter how big they are, no matter how dominant they are, is going to solve for the wide array of challenges we have right now. So I do think that partnerships like the one that Affinity has with Samba are really critical for addressing the market's needs moving forward.
There's more to say on the topic, I think, which is, you can work with advertisers' first-party data as well, and you can work with third-party providers like Affinity, and they both serve a role, right? So some clients will have access to a lot of first-party data on their customers, and the advent of clean rooms, and even the clean rooms that are being offered by our digital platform partners are useful in being able to bring data sets together in a very privacy compliant manner to drive insights for targeting and for measurement. But a lot of clients don't have access to really good data on their customers, or they're not willing to share it externally for this purpose. So that is exactly why we partner with companies like Affinity, like Fandango, and hopefully next year we'll be talking about more partnerships, because this allows us to create targeting and measurement that is totally turnkey, right? We create the products, they're ready to go, they can be created and dynamically updated in the targeting space very quickly, and the measurement, it can be done without having to access a client's first-party data. We think that's super valuable for publishers and platforms like TikTok and Spotify and others, because that's something they can offer without having to go through a pretty tough process sometimes.
If I may, just add a third option
Yeah.
there too, because what we also see sometimes is advertisers do have that ability to onboard their first-party data, but they really need incremental reach. And so how can they do that in the smartest way possible beyond their first-party data to get somebody excited about that new release, right? We see a lot of advertisers who really want to focus in on, well, this is who watched last season of a certain title. Well, that's great, but I would argue we're going to have really high organic tune-in to those viewers because they're already invested. So how do we get to expand that reach to new audiences? And getting smart about audience utility, I think, is a great way to do that.
And George, I would think that TikTok is able to do something similar to that, right? Look at the way audiences are able to discover new shows and the way that they're able to discover movies. And I know that when I was reading your report, it said something like 52% discover a TV show through TikTok, right? And I thought that was a very interesting way of looking at it. They discover the show there, and then they're able to then look at that show, and then it takes them back to TikTok. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit.
We're doing quite well. I think what I'm grateful for is, I think there's a couple of pieces. I think that it is amazing that we're now, I think just because measurement has gotten harder, everything has to be, we have to rebuild a lot of things as measurement experts where we used to 10 years ago. It doesn't have to negate the fact that there's a lot of innovation, and there's also a lot of capability with really strong measurement teams will be a competitive differentiator, and they will help you overcome this. I think when it comes to some of the reasons why the campaigns that we're finding are very successful is, yes, it's really great content, really authentic. It comes with the symbiotic relationship of both organic opportunities, but it is breaking through. In fact, I think Kantar in their latest media reaction study ranked as #1 when it comes to attention. So it's great to see that across the research that we've been seeing in the marketplace and also other independent parties, the opportunity is there, the audience is there. I think the burden on my team has been to help to understand the opportunity, but also partners such as Samba to show that, yes, it works. And then the shared burden that we have with our agency partners and our client partners is this genuine question of TikTok works better when, and it's going to be part of it when it's how you're building the experiments and on the media side, but also what is it creative, what is the message, what is the offer, and that's the exciting part about marketing, to where having strong measurement peers at the table really makes all the difference.
George touched on something that I think is worth mentioning. Again, we try to teach folks and provide real-world examples. So one of the ways that Samba's measurement science team and our sales team works with partners like Spotify and TikTok is when we get a nice stable of studies under our belt, we get to look at them across 20, 30, 40, 50 studies, and we call them meta studies. And what we're doing is we're not delving into the individual research for any particular campaign. We're looking for the themes and the trends across the overall thing. And what we're able to provide back to partners are thresholds and benchmarks and tactics that are working consistently for the category to help them guide their clients to better improve performance.
So Stephanie, what do you think as far as how do you best advise your clients as far to how to move forward with, new research, or how do you get them to move from that, well, this is interesting, but I'm actually going to take action on this. I'm actually going to have a resource. I'm actually going to dedicate resources to this, or move beyond that inertia that we hear so much about in the measurement space?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really interesting because we've hit on storytelling and insights, and I think insights is really important because especially when you think about transaction data or purchase data, it's often relegated to the bottom of the funnel, right? People are looking at it, okay, I can target with this and I can measure with it. But what we're seeing much more adoption with our client base is leveraging the data for insights. And Chris hit on this where there's a lot of companies that have first-party data that they can bring to the table. There's just as many that don't. And so if you think about the power of transaction data, it's more than just measurement. It's also helping to supplement your understanding of your audience, right? Are your loyal customers leaving? If so, who are they going to? How are they shopping across your category? How are they shopping outside of your category? So you can start to understand different partnerships and different opportunities to engage and collaborate across the ecosystem. But really, I think what we've focused on is understanding that time and resources are precious. How do we increase the actionability of our data? How do we make it so you don't have to have a full-time dev who knows how to write SQL queries to extract those insights, but actually creating a playbook where you can say, hey, you want to understand cross-shopping behaviors. You want to understand market share. You push a button.
Turnkey.
We've done all,
Turnkey
we've
is what
done
it's all
all of
about.
that work for you, and here's a playbook of insights that you can then act upon. So I think it's a combination of bringing the topic upper funnel, but then also thinking about how do I make it easy to understand, interpret, and act on that data versus it just being a deluge of insights.
You also just gave me a good idea for a new product.
Okay.
Competitive
Add me
targeting.
2024.
And that might be the answer to my last question with only 2 minutes, but I was going to say, what's the one wish that you have regarding this topic? What is if you could distill it down to one word, if we're thinking about incrementality in the next year and that kind of measurement, what's the one thing that you wish that you could, if you could snap your fingers, would be different in a year? Amy, if you want to start.
Oh gosh. I think I'm going to stick to how I kind of started this conversation. I just want to see more discipline in the space. Okay. I just want to see advertisers who are really able to kind of find that KPI, really hone in on it, and work with their partners to to conduct that measurement. If I have to go a more technical route, I will say I'd love to see more advancements with clean room technology. I think that there's a lot there that can be, that's still very untapped. And so we'll see where that ends up on the hype cycle, but excited about clean rooms too.
Okay.
Yeah, we are also very excited about clean rooms. I think it's important that we're thinking about privacy and how we protect data. I would say if there's one big macro theme for me, it would be how do we leverage data as more than a tool? How do we leverage it as an insights generating opportunity to feed into storytelling, to feed into targeting, and to feed into measurement?
Okay, Chris?
The one word is embrace. And what I mean by that is I have a strong instinct, and we at Samba have a strong instinct that as media becomes more addressable and more measurable, advertisers are going to grab onto outcome measurement in a greater way. So I would like to see greater embrace of measuring the outcomes. Everybody's going to measure currency, but a higher percentage of advertisers performing outcome measurement.
Definitely.
Right. George?
Expect more innovation, but focus the teams on understanding what your measurement journey looks like to find agreement.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. That's a wonderful way to end. Thank you to my panelists. Thank you to Samba. And thank you all for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Danielle.
Thank you.